Today's Mind Espresso is all about the power of the mind and how to put your mind in service to you and not make your mind your enemy. And we're going to look at some research that I've compiled over a 10-year period and also a book called The Unbeatable Mind by Mark Devine, former Navy SEAL. And I'm going to start with Mark, who has two high-level thoughts. Number one, in Navy SEAL training, right, they preach that you win in your mind first, right? You don't win on the battlefield until you have won in your mind. And that to win in your mind and be at your best, you have to put yourself into a positive frame. So Navy SEALs, as much as they are physically fit and having fantastic training, are mentally tough, right? And they're not afraid to look at their emotions. They're not afraid to look at their self-talk and reorient their self-talk to win. And that's actually backed up by research, right? There is, depending on which research you looked at, we have between 15,000 and 50,000 thoughts per day, right? And those thoughts are our operating system, right? They're running our lives throughout the day. I have a negative thought about someone, I'm going to perceive that as negative, I'm going to start creating a negative circumstance, right? There's a study done with tennis players. I shared this on a previous Mind Espresso. And they had tennis players who went to play with a positive thought and tennis players who went to play with a negative thought. Those who had a positive thought had much lower anxiety by 25% and much higher performance by about 20% than those who went with negative thoughts. So our positive operating system is what we need to perform at a high level. Question, though, is how do you get there? Well, Mark shares a couple of simple tricks that he uses. None of they're tricks, except they're just ways of managing your mind. Number one, you have to be very observant, right? When you start experiencing a negative emotion, you have to ask yourself, what is the negative thought that's associated with that? So this first point is when you feel negativity, even the slightest bit of negativity, you have to stop right there because it will metastate, it will run. One negative thought will build on another, right? So at the first instance of a negative thought or negative interaction with someone, cut it off, stop it. And he immediately has a go-to phrase like, I got this, I can do it, I've done it before, I can handle this, right? And that reorients his mind and changes his brain chemistry. And then he tries to pull up a mental image, right, that is a positive image for him to focus on. And, he uses kick ass and taking names, and he remembers a time when he kicked ass and he took names. And then he goes to a mantra. Why? Because if you have negative thoughts that are creeping in, you've got to keep the positive thought train going or the negative thoughts will start creeping in and start running the show. So he has mantras that he uses throughout the day. People use affirmations, he uses mantras, same concept, right? And this was great. His mantra was, feeling good, looking good, I belong in Hollywood. Looking good, feeling good, I belong in Hollywood. Now say that about 5 times and see if you're not in a good mood. So that's his simple process. But more long term, he said, look, you've got to be able to quiet your mind in some way so that you're not suffering what so many people call the monkey mind, where you're just getting inundated by thoughts and thoughts and thoughts. Whether that is through meditation or whether it's through yoga or running or, just silence and reading, whatever it is, you've got to be able to quiet your mind so that you can become more aware. And then once you gain that awareness, then you have to be able to look at what is negative in your life and get it out, right? He doesn't turn on the TV. He doesn't engage negative people. He says if there are negative people in your life, you either have to avoid them or block them, right? Because they will infiltrate your mind. You'll start your metastating process. And you have to look at your life and understand where you're getting positive and negative images, right? And if you're getting negative images and negative words and negative thoughts from people or circumstances, you got to cut that out. And then the third part of this is once you gain awareness and then you start seeing where negativity creeps in and you can position yourself for positivity, it's like then you got to be the author of your own story. You can't let life write your story, right? Because the brain is a sense-making mechanism. The problem is it makes sense of things in good and bad ways, right? So we have to frame the positive story. And he says, use the most positive story in any circumstance, and this echoes what we had with Sean Acor, right? The most positive story in any circumstance. And that means you've got to think about your words, you've got to think about the images that you're bringing, you've got to become the author, the producer of your own story in life. Now, if you're looking to just interdict, right, and you're trying to just take a break from all the mental chatter that's going on, the SEALs use something called box breathing to calm themselves, to center themselves, and it's a nice shortcut. The box is 4 sides, each is 5 seconds. The first 5 is breathing in through your nose, and that's really important because that activates the parasympathetic nerve system, to the count of 5, or quiets it down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then hold it for 5. Then out through the mouth for 5. then hold it for 5, then in through the nose for 5. And they do box breathing, and one Navy SEAL did it for 2 hours underwater while he had very low oxygen. He was trying to conserve oxygen. It was the only way he survived because it quiets down the parasympathetic nervous system. So a couple things to leave you with this mind espresso. 1, you win in your mind first. 2, you win in your mind by creating the most positive story for you to attach to, because that's how your body and your mind performs at the best. Number 3, you need a process, right? You need a process to interdict, whether it is saying something positive and a positive image and then a mantra, or something you do on your own. You need to create that process, and then you've got to do some behavioral engineering. You've got to put yourself in circumstances where you're not around negativity, where you're around people who bring out the very best in you. And that is strength of mind, but it's a process, and it's something that anyone can chip away at. And by the way, when you start it, you're probably not going to be that good at it if you've had a lot of negative talk going on. And that is this week's Mind Espresso.